Hey everybody, it's David, Carolina Luther, and we're here today doing a pretty cool, fairly straightforward project. We got a nice early 60s Martin D-28, 63 I believe, and the bridge is starting to come loose. It's lifting in the back. You can see a gap in the back of the bridge, and this is a real common issue with all guitars. I see with vintage guitars, a lot of times with age, they will, as the top changes shape and bellies, the bridge can't move as much as the top does. Or if the guitar gets left in the heat, like in a hot car or in an attic, a lot of times this will be the very first thing to go because there's no mechanical lock here. It's purely glue holding this on. There's a lot of tension on a acoustic guitar bridge. So this, like I said, this is something I see all the time. And I've been wanting to do a video on this for a while. And we got this nice old Martin here that has no other issues. It's the only thing I'm dealing with. I actually did have other issues. I've done a lot of work with this guitar previously, but we're just dealing with this bridge right now. So we're going to show you how that's done. Okay, so we got all the strings off, saddle and bridge pins out, and I've put some painter's tape around this bridge to protect the top. And you can never have too much tape because you are working with metal tools. You don't want to scratch the finish, especially on a nice old vintage guitar like this. It's kind of hard to do touch-ups and match that patina, so you got to be real careful with this. But you also got to be careful with tape. A lot of times, sometimes the finish can get brittle over time. This nitrosalus can crack and get brittle with age, and even newer guitars. A common factory defect that I have seen with Martin guitars is I've run into several that have had very brittle finish, or they just didn't let it fully cure between coats, and the result is you couldn't, if you do anything, put any tape on it, it's going to peel finish off. And so what we're going to do now, to remove this bridge, we're going to apply heat. What I have here is just a steel block, a handle welded to it, and I've heated this on a hot plate just behind me. You can barely see it. To about 250 degrees. That's hot enough to soften the glue, but not hot enough to scorch the finish around the bridge. It will scorch it if you touch it directly, but sitting on the bridge here, this is safe. So what we're going to do is let this sit for about 3 minutes, and that will absorb, the heat will absorb into this and soften the glue just enough that we can get a tool up under it and pry it loose. We have a larger block heating up as well. Alright, this has been sitting for a few minutes. And the heat should have radiated out into this bridge and into the top just enough to soften the glue. We can start prying it loose. So we're going to pull these off. Take our palette knife and start working it underneath this bridge. And this one should go fairly easily. It's almost completely popped loose already, and I know that this was done with high glue. Some will be harder than others. Modern guitars are typically done with tight bond as opposed to high glue. Take a little more heat to get it undone. And also, sometimes you get guitars that it's just starting to come loose on the corner. It's still glued pretty solid the rest of the way. And a lot of times it'll take 3 or 4 heatings to get this done. This one is coming off extremely easy, so usually it's that a little bit harder than this. And there we go. So we come loose, and now we got to clean this old glue off at the top of the guitar as well as on the bridge, and we will glue it back down. Okay, so now I got to remove all this old glue because new glue will not stick to old dried up glue for the most part. High glue will do better than most, but it's still best to go in and clean it. So we're going to take a scraper, a couple different size scrapers, and we're just going to get all this old, any little tiny slivers of spruce that come off with it, and all this old glue off. Being very careful not to change the shape of it, taking off only as much as we need to. Okay, now we have all the old glue scraped off. In many cases, you would have to actually reshape the bottom of this slightly to fit the top. So a lot of times the reason the bridge will come loose is because it's developed a belly over time. This one fits pretty dang good, so we're not going to worry with that. What we are going to do, our next step is I'm going to take a pointed scraper and I'm just going to cut grooves across here to rough this finish up. Because when you finish this with a scraper or with chisels when you're reshaping it, you end up with a surface that's as smooth as glass, and glue is not going to stick to this. Ebony is very difficult to glue as it is, and rosewood as well. But when it's slick like this, glue is not going to adhere to it. And like I said, glue is the only thing holding this in place. So we're going to just take this, we're just going to cut lines going diagonally, two different directions, get a nice rough surface that glue can adhere to, glue can soak into this, and it should stick. Go. You can see in the camera you have a nice rough surface there. It should hold glue. And we're going to do the top the same way. The top is spruce. It's not the super dense tropical hardwood, like ebony or rosewood like bridge, but you still need to get rid of this old glue. It doesn't need to be quite as rough of a surface to get it glued in here. We do need to get rid of this old glue. Okay, now we got this bridge prepped, ready to glue back down. We'll talk about how we're going to do that. There's a couple of different options for glues that people like to use for acoustic guitar glues. Probably the most popular glue today is Titebond, original Titebond, not 2 or 3. If you have a guitar, any guitar that's mass-produced, not a handmade thing, even if it's a high-end one, maybe in the past 50 years, this is probably what it was glued with originally. And a lot of builders use this, even custom builders. But we're not going to be using that today. This is a vintage guitar, and I just also like just doing things the old-fashioned way. So what I'm actually going to be using is hide glue. Now this, when you buy hide glue, it comes in a powder form. Kind of like crystal. It kind of looks like really coarse sand. And you have to process, you have to add water and melt it. And it'll congeal, and it's kind of like jello looking. Then when you need to use it, all you gotta do is heat it up so it melts, and you brush it on. They also make a liquid hide glue. I used to use this stuff a whole lot. I don't use it quite so much anymore. It can be just as strong if it's done right. But it has a couple issues with it. One is it takes a very long time to cure. You have to leave this clamp like a week with this stuff. The other issue is it does go bad in the jar, and they don't put an expiration date on these anymore. So you kind of just use it till it quits working. And something you quit using it when something fails. So it's not all that great. It's basically the same stuff, just dissolved in acid to make it liquid instead of heated. So we're going to be doing things old-fashioned. We're using hide glue because that was what was done on this guitar originally. That's the correct glue for this. And it also has the advantage of the Titebond in that it's just as strong, if not stronger, yet it also melts a little bit easier with heat, which is a good thing because you want to be able to get a joint apart for repairs in the future. Titebond will melt with heat. The original Titebond will, 2 and 3 not so much. But it takes a little bit more heat. It takes a little bit more force to get something apart like this. This is a lot easier and cleaner to undo. And also a little bit of leftover glue residue doesn't matter so much because it'll remelt with this. It won't remelt with that. Once it's cured, it's hard. So we'll be doing this with the old-fashioned hot hide glue. And there's a process to getting this into this gelatin form like this from the dry crystals. This plenty of videos on YouTube on how to do that. If you're curious, I may do a video on that at some point. We'll just going to show you how to actually use it today. So we'll get this bridge prep ready to glue down. Now we got our glue pot warming up. We're going to go ahead and prep this. Make it a little bit easier to clean once we get it done. And one of the things about, really one of the only real downsides to high glue, in my opinion, is it sets extremely fast. You only got a couple minutes to work with it before it sets. So we got to make preparations to get everything lined up, everything ready to go so we can get it clamped down in just a couple minutes. What I'm doing now is I'm just going to take some masking tape and we'll just bring it around the outline of the bridge. This will catch majority of the glue that oozes out. And we'll peel this tape up, it'll make it a lot easier to clean the excess glue. And you'll notice I'm kind of removing some of the tack from this tape, but sticking it to my shirt because I don't want to peel up finish with this. The older guitars, that finish can be brittle, so you got to be careful. And some newer Martins, like I said earlier, that is a problem I run into. Had a D-28 just last week. Finish peeled up and I popped the bridge off. Looked like new. It was an 04, fairly recent D-28. Golden era D-28, nice one. Okay, so now we got that. We'll set this in place where we want it. And we got to be able to get this in place very quickly. So what we do is I take the masking tape and we'll just cut down through it several layers with the razor blade. And that way I can pull off a big chunk, not just one layer. See here. And we'll cut this in pieces. And this will act as our guide so we get everything positioned exactly right. So we'll place this exactly where I want it. Line up precisely. And we'll just put that right up against it. Put it a little bit closer. I also like to put a strip of masking tape underneath on the bridge plate. That way no glue drips down through the pinholes on the back of the guitar, or even worse, gluing my clamping cawls to the guitar. So just put a masking tape right there. Catch any of that glue. So now this is ready to go. So now we'll heat our glue up and get it ready. Okay, you can see we have our bottle of high glue sitting in our glue pot. We have water in the pot and our jar is sitting down in the water so that it heats evenly. It's still gel right now, it hasn't quite liquefied yet. Once it does, we'll be able to apply it. And we're shooting for about 140 degrees. 140 to 150 is temperature what this glue to be at. You don't want to get it too hot, you don't want it boiling because it will start to degrade. It's got to be hot enough to melt. So right now I have this turned all the way up. Once it's liquid and the temperature reaches 140, I have it marked where it will sit at that temperature, and we'll let it sit at that temperature while we finish getting our guitar prepped. Okay, so we're about ready to glue this thing down. As I said before, high glue sets very, very quickly. So give us a few more minutes of working time. We're going to heat the top of the guitar and the bridge with the heat gun. You can be very careful with a heat gun. I recommend people who don't know what they're doing use a blow dryer instead of a heat gun, because you can get so hot it will damage the finish here. So what we're going to do here, just going to put some hot air on the top here. I'm feeling, make sure it doesn't get too hot. Let's have a bridge sitting over here in it as well. Be very careful, we won't get too hot. Quickly to the brush. And we're just going to slob it on here. We want it nice and thick. Don't have too much, not enough. A heavier coating of glue will hold heat better. You can always clean off the excess. If you don't have enough, there's not much you can really do about it. So nice, thick. That's good right there. Place. We have all of our clamps and cawls ready to go. We'll move quickly. Move quickly because this stuff sets almost immediately. You gotta get it, our clamps tightened down before it starts to set. What to do the trick. Got a lot of glue oozed out. That's good. We have plenty of glue. We'll let this sit for 15 minutes. Leave all this oozed out. We're going to let this sit for about 15 minutes so it starts to congeal a little bit. When you peel this tape off, it will take the majority of this ooze out with it. And then we just go back with the brush with some hot water and get the rest of it. Okay, now it's been sitting long enough for this to congeal a little bit. We'll pull this tape off, and this should take majority of our excess glue away. Sitting for 15 minutes. The tape will peel up and the glue will peel up with it. The vast majority of it is. That takes care of the bulk of the excess glue. The rest of it, we still have our glue pot cooking. There's no glue in it, it's just hot water. We'll just take our brush and go around it and remove any additional glue that was left behind. Okay, so this is ready to go. And high glue takes several hours to cure, so usually I like to let this sit overnight. I let this sit overnight, then I'll pull the clamps off. And just to be safe, I usually like to let them sit another day or most of the day, just to make sure that everything's dried out. Because right now we have tape underneath the caul here, so no air can get in here and no water can evaporate out. So I like to go ahead and take the clamps off first thing in the morning tomorrow, and either late in the evening tomorrow or next day we'll string it up and see how it does. Okay, this has been sitting overnight, so we'll go ahead and pull our clamps off and see what we got. And I like to let it sit for a few hours after I pull the clamp off to make sure that any moisture in there is evaporating. It's completely cured. Like I can see there's a little bit of residue where some glue got up on top of the bridge here, but I waxed this, so most of this should come right off. So I'm going to lightly sand this with some 400 grit because there's usually no finish on a bridge. That should move any residue off the top. Now I'll do 400 grit, and then 8, and then 1,000, and 15. Okay, so now we polished this up to 1,500 grit sandpaper and get rid of any scratches I might have made from my clamping cauls or any glue ooze out. But now it's now a little bit lighter color than the fretboard because we've removed any surface oxidation. So what I'll do now to darken it is we'll just take a rag and a little boiled linseed oil and just lightly wipe it on there. Good idea to condition unfinished wood like bridges and fretboards with linseed oil on occasions anyways, and a little bit of linseed oil will hide, get rid of that unoxidized, a little drier look from when you freshly sanded something. Make it match the older wood that you haven't messed with. And we'll just wipe that on there and then wipe off any excess. The other end of the rag, and you never know I sanded it. Okay, that's been sitting. Let it sit another day. Mornings. So now we're going to go and put strings on this thing. But first thing we got to do is we got to clean out these pinholes because they're now filled with glue. So we're going to drill a small hole. Through now we got to bring these back out to accept the pins. Our bridge pins ain't gonna go all the way down now, so let's stop right about there. So we just take our peg reamer, very carefully ream these back out. That's perfect. The fit I'm looking for is I want it to come all the way down but not fall out. And ideally it should just be a little bit glued down at the bottom, so it shouldn't take much. I have a helper. Thunderbolt. You can't even my shot. Come on. That'll do it. So all I got to do is put strings on it. Yeah, the setup is already pretty much right on this guitar before the bridge popped loose. We're not going to mess with that. Just put our saddle back in place. And put strings on it and it'll be ready to go. All right, so got strings on it, got tuned up to pitch. Everything's solid, it's staying in tune. And this guitar should be good to go. See, we have no gaps on the back like we had before. Everything looks nice and solid. I'm David, this is Carolina Luthier, and we'll see you around.